We are live. We are live on the Jeff Nosing podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dave Flood. What is up, brother?
What is that? Everything and nothing. I'm busy. I'm happy to do this. I'm excited, especially since I got to kind of know you through Chef Rush first, and through his arranging his podcast. I mean, I didn't arrange it, obviously, but he reached out to me about you.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go back, we've been somewhat in contact for the last year or so, and I've been following you. You've been following me. So this is the first time we're actually having like a live conversation, which I'm pretty excited about. You bring so much to the table because you've done so many different things. And one topic of that is kind of a hot topic that is bringing a lot of attention right now with the new movie Sound of Freedom is child trafficking and pedophiles and all this crap in the world that a lot of people push away from talking about. And I think the more we bring awareness to it, the more we're going to bring somewhat of a solution and a fix. It'll never be a fixed problem, but it'll be a situation where we could get ahead a bit more of it than we are right now. Because I think a lot of when we talk about police services or government services, it's just a chasing game. We're constantly chasing this, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And one thing that somebody brought a stat to me about, and it kind of made sense. I'm going to say a stat is when it comes to criminal activity, when you look at finances for these criminal activity groups, drugs was always the biggest one. And they're saying right now, over the next 2-3 years, it's going to turn into child trafficking because you sell drugs once, you could sell a young girl 10 times a day, and it's just constant revenue. And it's scary and disgusting to hear that, but it's the truth reality. And I think the more awareness we have, the more we're going to be able to control it, get funding for it, and get many people behind it. So give me a little history of yourself. Give me a little history of yourself, and then we'll lead into the conversation.
So I'm now a retired police officer. I've been retired about 6 years. I spent 30 years in policing in a major Ontario police force or police service, and the last 17 years of that career was on my department's hostage rescue team. We were a full-time unit. However, we were only large enough that we covered the 24-hour shifts on call. We had a shift, and then when we weren't physically at work, we were on call the rest of the time. And that was a voluntary thing, to join the unit. You had to agree that that's what you were willing to do and kind of give up your life for, really, in a sense. So I spent 17 years in that unit and rose through the ranks up to when I retired as a staff sergeant. But fortunately, I was an active staff sergeant, and I was still doing the calls in that role.
So what? Let's dive right into it. I mean, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about yourself and all that. But when you're looking at And why I love you being local in Ontario and Canada, because two of my closest friends are one's York Region Staff Sergeant, the other is Peel Region Staff Sergeant, and I have deep conversations with them all the time. And the child trafficking is not something that with the movie you perceive it to be in South America and all this. It's happening here. It's happening in North America. I mean, abduction, how these criminals pretty much search out these young ladies on social media that they were having family issues or in homeless shelters or anything like that, women's shelters, and they're kind of bringing them in, and then before you know it, they're gone. Let's talk about your experience with stuff like that locally, and then we kind of talk about abroad and how it is such a global issue right now.
I think I'd have to go back to my uniform days to start with. And we're comprised, where I worked, we're comprised of a number of cities. And one of the major cities had a small tract of prostitutes. And you kind of got to know them all because you dealt with them all. And we had all their pictures up and that. And you ran into them time and time again. So you actually talk to them. And I was in a plainclothes unit for 3 years, and we did John stings. So we had an officer that went and posed as a prostitute, and then when the deal was made, the act for the money, we moved in and made the arrest. And it goes back to those days, because we had an officer that she looked young, and you had the gamut. You had from 18-year-old guys to 80-something-year-old men, trying to pick her up. And so I think it kind of starts with, as a outsider looking in, even though I was a police officer, I still looked at it. At the time I didn't have kids, but then when I was in the hostage rescue team, I had kids. But back then I started to look at it, and I think every man goes through the stage where, you have your kind of age, when you're trying to date and stuff, you have your age that you won't go below, and you may not go above that type of thing. And it's kind of normal.
Yeah.
To have those
standards.
Those self standards. But then when you see these guys picking up these prostitutes, there's no standards. It's just the act. And although we didn't have any visible children doing it, it was out there, because that there's parents that are allowing it, which is more sickening. And we dealt with a lot of areas and a lot of apartments and things. I say apartments because, it at the time anyway, that's sort of was the lower income in these lower income apartments. And the living conditions in a lot of them were horrendous. And you wonder, you can't just assume that they're prostituting out their children. But, sometimes you just got to wonder. And, we'd involve Children's Aid Society as much as possible, and they had more powers than us a lot of the time, which was fantastic.
Yeah, that's still the case with a lot of situations with police officers. This is something totally off topic, but my good friend that is a sergeant at York region just arrested a girl the other day, a 22-year-old, just random saw her driving very frantically. As a sergeant, he wouldn't usually never pull anybody over, decided to pull her over. And she seemed very nervous, got her out of the car, and found 2 loaded guns and $10,000 in cash. I don't know if she was transporting it or not. But the long story is, she was out within an hour. And as an officer nowadays, that's something that you're putting your life on the line. And is the justice system backing up what you're doing, your job? So that's another topic for another day. But
yeah.
So when you're looking at this and your unit and your experience, give me some stories or give me some ideas of things that you encountered when it came to, I guess, pedophiles and all that crap, all the stuff that we don't want to talk about. Give me some stories, because I think they're very important for people to hear the reality of these stories.
Well, there's 2 things. There's the units that investigate it. Now there's human trafficking units in every major department, police department, which is fantastic. It's been far too long coming.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, Operation Underground Railroad didn't start those units, but they all kind of started around that same time. It seems like. But being in on the tactical team, the hostage rescue team, because we had the training, we could do things the safest way. So we acquired a lot of abandoned houses from property owners and things to do our training in, so that we could have realistic training. And at the time, we didn't have a human trafficking unit, but we had the sexual assault unit, which also had child exploitation part of it. And more they were investigating pedophiles online. And one of the first that I can kind of remember was parents found, went on their daughter's Facebook, and they were active parents participating in her life. They just happened to go on her Facebook account and see that she was conversing with this guy who was really pushing to meet her. So they talked to her, and again, she just thought it was, a guy interested in her. But something about the way it was going on pushed the parents to contact the police. So the unit took over her Facebook account and started acting as her. And, just let this guy, who turned out to be a 40-something-year-old man, and this girl was 14, and he knew that. And he really wanted to meet her. So what they did was the unit came to us and said, have you got any houses, that are out of the way type of thing that we can set up a meet? And we absolutely. So they did that part. And essentially this girl said, well, I'm going to my grandparents. And, but it was the sexual assault unit that was saying this. They're acting as her. She's going to her grandparents. Grandparents aren't going to be home, come and meet her there. And he wanted to take her out shopping. So again, this type of thing. So we set up, and we were actually had guys in full camouflage, and because the property was like rural.
Yeah.
So lots of trees and that. And when this guy showed up, we moved in because he had said everything and done everything. We just couldn't let him get, into the house. And he had what was commonly termed as a full rape kit. He had a knife, he had a knife, he had duct tape, he had a change of clothes. This guy showed up with no underwear and a pair of loose gray track pants and a white tank top. I mean, it was kind of like, we were like, go figure. But that's, I don't know if it was, I'm sure it wasn't his first time. But still, he had no intention of going anywhere. He knew that there was going to be nobody home. He knew he had a window, and he brought the tools. And the only reason we can assume that he had no underwear on was just so that he could do whatever he wanted to do quicker. I just, you're just disgusted. And by then I was a father. So it's, you have to be professional, obviously. And, but what the thoughts that go through your head as a police officer, I mean, it's not even as a police officer. You're a dad.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine learning that, your daughter?
Yeah. I mean, the animal instincts kick in automatically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was a cut and dried slam dunk, although lots of people can read between the lines because there's so much more to it. But it just felt really, really good. And that was my real first experience with a pedophile like this.
Could I ask you a question, Dave? With something like that, an individual like that, there was no actual contact with the girl physically. How does something like that in court? Is he out within a couple of days? Like, how is he charged? Because there's no act besides the assumption that he was going to do something. How do you guys keep something like that behind bars if they don't have a criminal background to start with, or a previous charge or anything like that? That's the scary part, because something like that, I mean, with the right lawyer, could get out like this. How do you stop that? And did that individual stay in jail? Like, did you follow up to see what happened with that?
No, So I mean, that's the thing about my unit. We have, immediate contact, and
Yeah.
then we're out. We don't follow those things. But you're 100% right. Our justice system does, and there isn't enough there to keep him in jail. But there is that amount of intelligence gathering and identifying that person. Putting him in a DNA data bank if you can get it. This sort of thing, which is phenomenal, because your DNA goes into a DNA data bank if you're involved in any violent offense.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people caught through minor things, through minor assaults. They're caught for historic crimes. I divert for 1 second, because we took down a guy that had raped a girl 15, 20 years prior, and it had gone unsolved. There were no witnesses there, but because he was in jail because of an assault and his DNA was taken, that caught up to him. And it was a horrific, horrific rape that I don't know that the woman ever recovered. I know I did some follow-up reading and that, and hopefully she got the help she needed, but just absolutely horrific. And it happened in a small town in our region. But keeping them in jail. No, you're right. It's, the lawyers do their thing and get them out. Unless you have hard evidence of an act, of a sexual assault, it's hard to very, very difficult.
And that guy had no priors, I'm assuming?
That I from what I remember, he had nothing, at least violent, that we were concerned that he might be carrying a gun. Because we get all that information so that we know how to tailor our response to him. But we were concerned enough that it wasn't like just a walk up and arrest him. We deployed snipers. We had vehicle block. It was a good rural location, so we were able to hide. And then just converge on his vehicle when he got there. But the unit had told us that they had enough evidence that all they needed to do was get him there.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then there's the circumstantial stuff. Somebody could say, "Oh, my knife is for my job."
Yeah, exactly.
The duct tape is to fix this or that. But
when you hear a story like that, it's like, how many girls did he get to prior? I mean, did he murder any? Your mind starts going crazy thinking of the things that could have happened prior, right? So, yeah, scary, right?
Yeah.
One thing we talked about before we went on air was about the social media and how social media has kind of opened up the door for a lot of these pedophiles, and to in a way recruit young girls to either they're themselves or to recruit them for prostitution or bring them up board or drug them out. There's so many different possibilities of what they could do with it. Let's talk about that for a bit. Let's just talk about social media and how these guys are using social media. So if anything, you bring awareness to parents, right?
Yeah. They're commonly, a lot of people are called trolls on social media.
Yeah.
And, they're the ones that just go on in a hidden identity and badmouth people, especially famous people or whatever, and you've dealt with a lot of your past guests have, as we call them, haters or trolls or that. But then there's the pedophile or the sexual predator troll that is looking for the open Instagrams or the open Facebooks where they don't have to request a friendship or that, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they get them, because unfortunately the young kids, are either not savvy enough to make their account private, although they're getting a lot better. But this is where parents need to really come in if they have to face the fact that their kid's going to have social media.
Yeah.
Even if they ban it, kids are doing it. So then there's the ones that just accept friends because they want to see that number. It's insane, that number of friends and likes.
Yeah, of course.
That you want to go. And here's a perfect example. You need likes and you need followers for your podcast, right? It helps with that.
Of course.
But for kids, it's just look at how many friends do you have? I've seen it. I've seen them compare.
It's a dopamine, right? It's like the dopamine effect.
Yes, 100%. It's if I can't get popularity over here, I'm going to get popularity on here.
Yeah.
And we take pictures sometimes of our kids and their friends. I mean, my kids aren't kids anymore.
Yeah.
But even still sitting on the couch with each other, and they're all on their phones.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like,
well, that's not even kids. That's even
on social media with?
Yeah, that's even adults. I mean, everybody's hooked to their phone, right? So how as a parent, how can you be more vigilante about it? So, I mean, when you get to a kid and my kids are very open still with me, which I appreciate. But when you get to most kids, when they turn 13, 14, they try to become more private. They kind of push away from their parents. They don't want to hang around with their parents. How do parents become more active to find these things and help them?
Well, this may sound sort of heavy-handed or authoritarian, but we're their parents. Their safety is our prime concern. And if most of the parents pay for their kids' phones, correct?
Yeah.
So like up to a certain age anyway. And a lot of the parents give their kids phones for safety and stuff. Simple fact is, if you're going to be on social media, I want to know I think even at a certain age, you can say, I want your password, and it's not about not trusting them. It's about not trusting everybody else out there.
Yeah.
And they're coming out with more, I'll use Snapchat, it's peer to peer. So unless you're in that group, you don't know what's being sent. Instagram, if you're a follower, you get to see everything. But what I'm finding also in my current, one of my current contract jobs is lots of people have second ghost accounts. My daughter, who's 23, has a ghost account, but it's not to post because I've been on it.
Yeah.
It's not to post stuff that she doesn't want me to see. But with kids, sometimes they'll have your good account and your not so good account. So parents need to be aware of that. And a lot of the time you can search it under the name because they have to sign up under an email. Yeah.
Yeah. So when the movie Sound of Freedom came out, what was your first reaction when you heard that the movie was finally being released? And let's talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I joined Operation Underground Railroad, which is the basis for it. Yep. Tim Ballard started. Probably, I've been gone 6 years, probably 5 years or more ago, my friend put me onto it. And that's when I joined as a volunteer. And he sent me a YouTube link and I started watching. So all this stuff was on YouTube 5 years ago. When they started making the movie, and I thought it was coming out 5 years ago. That's the way they were billing it.
Yeah.
And no idea that people wouldn't touch this, for financing and for putting it out there. Who wouldn't? And then the movie comes out and all the stuff behind it about who turned down producing this film.
Yeah.
And that's that was probably my biggest shock, because I had seen almost all the footage on YouTube of the movie in bits and pieces in different videos. So the movie didn't shock me, but what shocked me is people not wanting to touch it, to produce it.
Explain why. I know what my feelings are about that. We'll talk about that. But what is your mindset with that? Why do you feel that?
My mindset is because it's a controversial subject, although I don't know why.
It shouldn't be,
unless it's controversial, because they are involved or know people involved and want to cover it up and keep it buried. You know, Jeffrey Epstein was like, again, why did it take that for stuff? You know how much of that is out there? Like, I mean, well, this movie proves it, but I mean, that was right in the US.
Yeah.
You know, but it involved a high profile person that all of these, sorry, I shouldn't blanket saying all of these upper echelon or upper executives knew, but a lot of people, you know, a lot of the high flyers associate with each other. They may not know, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but some of them know.
I would say majority of them knew. I mean, it's all about at that level. It's all about accountability and it's that inner circle, and you can't break that inner circle with that much money involved, right? And obviously he was providing. I mean, in the end of the day, if you don't have a consumer, there's no crime involved. You need the consumer. So there was a consumer for what he was doing.
For sure. And you look at the statistics from the movie, that this has become the biggest business over drugs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, and like they say in the movie, how many you can sell whatever quantity of drugs you want one time.
Yeah.
You know, but the children or the people you can sell as many times a day as there are somebody to consume it.
Sickening, but
you know, and it's even sounds sickening coming out of my mouth saying people that want to consume it. Like it's you know, where are we as a society, you know, where that is what people do. And I'm
honestly a strong believer, David, there's always been sick, evil, monster individuals, and this has always been a need. I think the situation is now with social media, with just the vast amount of availability to get in public eye these images of these kids and in the child pornography. It's just bringing it to light a lot more. I honestly believe there's always there. Maybe they never pursued it because it wasn't available, but now the availability is growing so much more that it feels like it's going out of control. But I think it's always been there. But now social media and everything is fueling adding gas to the fire kind of thing, right?
100%. I mean, you know, drugs was the scourge of society, but so they threw everything at drugs.
Yeah.
You know, at combating drug dealers and consumption and stuff. And now we've gotten to the point where the government is so okay with people consuming drugs that they set up safe drug use areas and give out needles and, you know, stuff like that, which blows my mind because we're paying for it.
Yeah.
You know, and now, so then my biggest concern is that, and some of this has started where they're trying to say that pedophilia is okay. I don't know what the term they're using.
I heard that. I actually heard that right now, and they're trying to pass some law in the U.S. that I was reading something about that as well. That would, God, I remember reading about this. which is absolutely sickening when you think about it.
100%, because as soon as you do that, it just explodes again, like drugs. So what's the next thing? How the biggest problem, in my opinion, anyway, is we're not showing it here as much. Because people watch that movie and they're going to go, well, that's in the Philippines. That's in Asia. They can talk about it happening in the US. They can talk about how many. But now we need to make a movie or high profile, it happening if we're talking Ontario, we have to show it happening in Toronto. But then we have to show it in smaller communities where it's happening as well. Because then people will start to wake up and go, holy shit, I know that street. It's 4 blocks away. That type of thing. And I'll give you a really good, which has stuck in my mind for years. So when I was on the tactical team, especially as a junior guy, we did community day displays. So we would go and all the units would have a display set up, and it was a community day, policing community day, and people would come out and look at what you had. So we would have a selection of our weapons chained up to the table, and we'd be standing there in our full tack gear, ready to answer questions. Not a word of a lie. I'm wearing my department's uniform, and this is my department's community day. And people come up and go, oh, are these things you've seized? And we tell them, no, these are the tools of our trade, the ones we use. And they'd say, oh, are you from Toronto Police? And we, turn the flash and say, no, we're here. Well, we don't have a need for you here. And it's just that kind of ambivalence to it that people don't understand. And we would explain to them, most of the time, you don't see us because we're working in the middle of the night. We're going and crashing the door beside you in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. When you get up in the morning, you go to work knowing nothing went on, and then you come home to the gossip of the street, that we in rural suburbia at 123 any street, right beside the lawyer, we crashed the door and arrested a bunch of people, with guns and drugs and so on and so forth. So it's people just burying their heads and not wanting to be aware that it's going on. So one thing you have to.
Sorry about it. Continue. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say is one thing, you should always want to know what's going on your street. And I get it. Some communities are worse than others, or it's like, don't involve myself in their business or whatever. And you don't necessarily have to involve yourself in your neighbor's business, but be aware. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And this is where you can call your police department wherever you live and ask to speak to somebody in the drug unit or the gang unit or whatever. And it's not like they're tracing your phone and coming over to your house and with lights and siren to interview you about what you're calling about your neighbor. You can just talk to them and say, I'm not too sure, but this is what I see across the road or 3 doors down, or maybe even next door. Is there something I should be concerned of? Some officers will say, we're aware of that house. Others will say, no, tell me more about it. They'll take down the information and they'll send undercover plainclothes officers out to watch the house, or to run some license plates and say, okay, we know that, that registered owner. Oh, we know that, like they'll watch the activity and then soon enough they'll start a project on that place. So it's not like you're having to call a cruiser to your home and walk outside and shake hands with the police officer and let them know, let everybody on the street know that you're talking to the police. That's Crime Stoppers is there.
I was about to say that.
You can call the.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
You can call your police department. Yeah.
So when you're involved,
you were going to say something.
I was going to say your involvement with the underground operation, the project. When did that start, and how was your involvement with that? And give me some stories that you were part of with that.
Unfortunately, other than awareness, the fundraise. So the closest chapter was Toronto, and then there was one in BC.
Yeah.
And I reached out to the Toronto one and basically, what's going on, because there's a, sort of somebody that's heading it up. Unfortunately, it changes because I had a lot of people when I first started promoting it on Instagram, on my Instagram, people were like, how do I get involved and all that? So I gave them the link and that, which is good, which is great. Hopefully they at least bought a shirt, like I did. That was the start of it, which was a donation, and then become aware of it. But then some people started reaching back to me and say, how do I get on one of these teams? And I'm like, well, unfortunately you can't. You're not an ex-special forces. You don't live in the US. They're not recruiting for, basically, people wanted to be vigilantes.
Yeah.
An organized vigilante. Which I'm sure there are hundreds of thousands of people out there that would love to be as part of a sanctioned, organized vigilante team. It's just not the reality.
Yeah.
So it's about awareness. It's and seeing if they're going to set up some type of booth or fundraising effort somewhere. And in the beginning, I reached out to the Toronto chapter and they weren't doing anything. And then, I won't make any excuses. I just kind of, lost kind of that momentum to keep reaching out to find out or do something on my own, as far as like, hey, can you send me some stuff so that I can do a booth here or there? And I got involved in other things, and busy with other work. It's no excuse. But then I thought, okay, I can still promote this. I can still talk about it.
Yeah.
I can still wear the shirt and have somebody ask me about it.
Awareness.
Canadian Tire supports my former department's human trafficking unit, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So there is stuff like that, and there is a growing awareness and movement. I think awareness is the best thing for the average person. Operation Underground Railroad, they take the money and they outfit some of these, underfunded agencies abroad.
Yeah.
And teach them. And that's a lot of what they're doing. Is they're giving them the tools of the trade, night vision, and teaching them how to do undercover operations and stings and things like that. So that's what they're taking the money, and promoting awareness and doing this movie.
When you see,
it was amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. When you see the backlash and the hate towards through certain groups towards Tim, where's your mindset with that? Have you seen that?
I've heard it. I haven't read. Well, I've read a few negative Instagram comments, but honestly, I ignore that.
Yeah, but where are they coming from? Like, why are people in denial of this? Like, where's the mindset of that?
Again, people will take the extreme that somebody wants to be recognized, and that's not it. And then some people just do it so that publicity. they say any publicity is good publicity. So even the negative people, the haters that are commenting, they're getting publicity, because look at how many people go back and trash talk them. And if they have a platform that's open, which I don't have any stats on it, but I would bet that not many of them, they make up a fake account in order to trash them, but some of them have platforms, and they want to promote their way of doing it. But it just, I cannot wrap my head around people being negative towards getting this out there and wanting to protect kids. I know how I would be with any of my kids, even at, in the adult ages they are.
Of course. Yeah. Protection, right?
100%.
I got a mug here today. I don't know if you could read what it says. Papa Bear.
Papa Bear.
It's just natural reaction. With the story you gave me before, is there more stories just to bring awareness to people, even on a local level, of what is actually happening out there, what has happened in the past, that people you arrested?
So basically, the police got a call from somebody complaining that there was a domestic going on in the room. So the police went, the uniform officers went, and it was just a girl and a guy, as far as they knew. The girl came out, she presented herself, she was fine, just saying that she had an argument with her boyfriend. There was no reason to separate them or get them out. Their boyfriend came out. She came out by herself. So usually that's a sign that there's nothing, because that's her opportunity to tell us that, police, something's wrong. So whatever happened, because I wasn't there, she went back in the room and the officers left. The hotel manager or the night staff that at that time saw what they believed was a gun and a guy dragging a girl back into this room. So because of that interaction, she called again. So plainclothes officers went and set up on the room to try to get an idea, check the book, see who's registered there, this sort of thing. Always registered under a female's name that's got no interaction with the police. And that's what these pimps, pedophiles, gangsters do, traffickers, they do. It's always on the female. It's always on somebody that doesn't have a record, to use their identification or their name. So they determine that there's a lot more people in this room, and now the hotel's manager is saying, no, I want them out. But the fact that there was apparently a gun scene takes it to the next level, and that's why the tactical unit were called. So we set up on the room. The floor is too high for anybody to jump, so and actually they didn't have balconies and the windows are sealed. Anyway, so we make the call. Girls out first, and then we pass them off to investigators. And they're all telling the investigators initially that they're 18, 19, whatever, because they're afraid for their lives. They're afraid that this is all going to blow over and that they're going to get the pimps, in this case, are going to get them back and they're going to get a beating. And that is what happens a lot. So we get one guy out at a time. And of course, they don't bring the gun out because they know that that's not going to end well. And it's three guys, and they're from Nova Scotia, which, as I was saying, for some reason, there's a lot that come from down east. They come up here, they bring the girls up here, again, because they're not known down there, or not known up here, and then pimp them out. And it turns out that the girls ranged in age from 13 or 14 to 16. Not one of them over 18. All of them from the street. All of them taken in by a guy that portrays himself as
the boyfriend
material. They take you to dinner. I'm going to buy you nice things. Then all of a sudden, the tables turn, and it's almost like they have a a manual of how to do it, and that's all part of the grooming. It's because these kids are from maybe from a broken home or run away just because they don't want the rules anymore, and they end up on the street, and then all of a sudden they get wooed by a guy, and they think it's great, and then all of a sudden that guy's got money problems now, and she's going to have to get money for him. And this is kind of typical of the way it happens. And they're like, well, I don't have a job. How do I do that? Well, all those clothes I bought you, all the parties we've been to, that thing you owe me, and then and unfortunately, you're talking these young girls, they're afraid to lose this guy.
What about drugs involved? Like, aren't there a lot of these young girls drugged right out?
They not on a regular basis. They party because that's what they've done. Like after, sure in the beginning, but I don't get to see them in the beginning. That's the problem. But then they do get hooked on drugs, a lot of them, and because they're partying and they like that. But then it's just all of a sudden now they are addicted. And the boyfriends / pimps, they don't want to call them boyfriends, have unlimited supply and give it to them, and in return, all of a sudden now they're out selling themselves in order to sort of pay back.
And this is all organized. A lot of it is organized crime. You're making it like in the conversation, it sounds like there's one boyfriend, but I'm aware that a lot of this has to do with organized crime. There's higher units that kind of control all these guys, right? Am I right or wrong with that?
No, there's it's like street level drug dealing in the beginning.
Yeah.
So you've got your street level drug dealers, you've got your street level pimps that have a couple of girls, but then they get together because there's strength in numbers. And then they have somebody that allows them to operate in their territory. And that's where the organized crime comes in, whether it's be outlaw motorcycle gangs or whether it be Eastern European organized crime, Asian organized crime, all of that. But they isolate themselves so well at the top.
It's hard to connect them.
It's hard to connect them, sure, and that's where you have your federal agencies that have the money to do these projects, and that actually help local police departments form these projects, joint forces projects, and that when they get it. But the bottom line is about people being aware and recognizing who is vulnerable. Whether it be people renting a hotel room for a hockey tournament, and a lot of that goes on. So these people can be aware of what's going on in the hotel around them. And you can always tell somebody that's scared. Somebody that's, you can't tell the ones that aren't scared, but you can tell the ones that it just doesn't make sense. And it's built on awareness. Especially parents have that sixth sense about them.
But a lot of these kids, like you're dealing with, you said 12, 13, 14-year-olds that obviously there's got to be some missing case or something with the parent. Like, are these just classified as runaways? Like, is there more investigation on this, or is it just a number? I was just in the US a week and a bit ago, last week. And there's a couple of pit stops. We just stopped, rest over. They call them tech stops. And you go to the bathroom and I was there with my kids. And I was like, look at this. And this is something you don't see in Canada when you travel across Canada, but it was literally two walls with maybe about 60, 70 photos of missing children in these rural areas. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, seriously, like, and the sad part is that's happening everywhere. It's happening in Canada, it's happening everywhere. And a lot of them just classify as either runaways or they just go missing and there's never really, there's no evidence base. So there's no investigation on it. How, as parents, is it just coming from homes that are so broken that the parents are so focused on their drugs and their booze and their life that they don't worry about their kids? Or is it situations where the police do not have the resources enough to put enough funds towards trying to find these kids?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. And in the U.S., every small town has a police department. You know, some of them with one sheriff or you know, one sheriff and two deputies.
Yeah.
So no, the resources aren't there. You know, and again, if the parent isn't pushing for somebody finding their kid, you know, then again, that doesn't get pushed sort of up the chain, you know, to the state, you know, or in Canada to the provincial level or that, you know, and yeah, there are so many broken homes, so much poverty, especially in the U.S. I mean, there's a lot here too, you know, and sometimes, you know, kids are better off not home.
Yeah, that's a sad part.
Right. But then they get into this on the streets because it's natural for them.
Yeah.
Right. Like we say, my fiance is a coach, and we say she says we always get what we put out there. And she deals with people that have bad relationships that say, you know, why can't I find a good man? Why can't I find a good man? You know, and it's one bad relationship after another. It's because kind of that's the person you're projecting, you know, out there, so you get it back. So a lot of these kids, when they come from a home that it's better to be on the street than be at home, they end up gravitating towards what they knew at home, but then somehow they feel safer with a stranger.
When it comes to pedophiles, U.S. has an open registry. Canada, I'm assuming, does not, right? That open registry for people to see where they live.
No, we can't see where they live.
but in the U.S., there is an open registry.
I've heard that. I've never, you know, because I don't get involved in, you know, specifics with the policing in the U.S.
Let's talk about laws. Let's talk about laws towards pedophiles. Where is your mindset with the laws towards pedophiles and how we should make it more either aggressive, more it feels like a lot of times you guys are getting slapped on the wrist, and there's no real when it comes to being caught with child pornography or crap like that, there's no real long-term they're looking at rehab and I'm a strong believer there's no rehab when somebody's that sick. So where's your mindset with that, and what has to be changed, and how could we as a society be more vigilant in catching these guys or just being aware of these guys? And because, like I said, if there's no open registry, your next door neighbor could be a pedophile and you're not aware of it and you have two small kids at home. How can you be more vigilant towards it, and how should the laws change?
Well, the laws have to be toughened for sure. You know, Trump just said that if he gets back in, you know, he's going to bring in the death sentence for pedophiles.
Where's your mindset with that?
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
As a dad, I definitely don't disagree at all either.
No. So public public awareness, as with everything. So we were printing the names of Johns caught in our hooker John sweeps. Why aren't we doing that with pedophiles?
Yeah.
You know, some could say that the John, and we had our share of Johns that, if you listen to their story and why they're trying to get the services of a prostitute,
Yeah.
you kind of like, well, it's like the guy that wants drugs, you know, to a certain extent. You're like, well, if you want to go buy drugs and harm yourself, go for it. If the prostitute wants to sell herself for money, you know, kind of go for it. But again, there's much that's very narrow focus.
I mean, but that's a different thing altogether. I mean, when you're looking at a legally aged prostitute, I'm a strong believer in there should be some regulation and actually turn it into an actual business. I mean, it's the oldest business in the world. So yeah, it's something where I don't disagree with actually having a set area, controlled government. Like if we were to actually legalize it and control it, I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's going to happen anyhow. So as long as the age is there, the protection is there, it's legalized. Like there's certain laws that have to be put in place, but I'm not against prostitution if it's properly run and done properly by the government. So that aspect is aside. Let's talk about, like I say, we're talking about minors now, right?
Well, again, there definitely has to be harsher laws. We need these people to be exposed, so that people know who they are.
And, do you think that's even going to happen, or the Canadian laws? It's the government's run with, I mean, part of my language, but a bunch of little bitches that are so worried about their politics that they will never allow that to happen.
I'm in agreement with you. I mean, having been in policing for 30 years, it's the criminal justice system is a revolving door, and a lot of people would say, "How do you not get discouraged?" But you know, when I was an officer, how do you not get discouraged and want to give up? Well, you never want to give up.
No,
because if you give up, they win.
Yeah.
So you do your part, and that's how you have to. That's how you sleep at night as a cop, is knowing that you did what you were supposed to do. What the justice system does, if you let it get to you, it'll affect you. But yes, it's not going to change. Nothing good happens until something bad happens first. And I can take that. You can go anywhere with that. I mean, police officers didn't get semi-automatic handguns until a police officer was killed, because he had a 6-shot revolver, and the two people that killed him had semi-automatic handguns and gunned him down in front of a house. Joey McDonald was his name. So and then his wife lobbied the government nonstop. She was a pit bull. And that's when police in Ontario got semi-automatic handguns with higher capacities.
We both are in agreement that harsher laws have to be put in place for pedophiles. We're both in agreement that an open registry or some form of name should be brought out, that the public should be aware if there's a pedophile living in your area. How, as a parent, let's just finish off as a parent, to be aware of surroundings. How do you like, you want to have that circle of trust with neighbors, with friends, with family, and then you hear stories like you were just talking about off the air of one of my last guests, Brady Lavoid, where a childhood friend of the family sexually assaulted him as a little boy. And he was a star hockey player, and he thought in the small town he was in, if he were to openly say that he was sexually assaulted as a boy, especially back then, um, he would be just picked on and pulled aside. How, as parents, could we be aware and more vigilant towards protecting our children?
Constant talking, be involved. One of the things, quick backtrack to when I was in a plainclothes unit in policing. We used to start off the year giving lectures to the schools. And we started out with the high schools, grade 9, 10s, and that. And then as word got out about our unit, because it was a fledgling unit, we're talking the early 90s. So more and more schools and the junior schools started asking for our presentations. And the biggest thing that we always found with kids getting into trouble, and I'm not talking about the sexual stuff, just kids getting into trouble and breaking into homes and gangs and this sort of stuff. Parents were in denial. Not my little Johnny, not my Tina. Go to their room, and then dinner time, which that's all kind of splintered off. I mean, growing up, I'm sure you were the same as me. We had dinner as a family every single night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's usually a couple hours after dinner, which was homework time or whatever. But now it's TV time, it's social media time, and then bed. So
Yeah.
how many hours a day or minutes a day as a parent of younger kids do you actually spend with your kids Monday to Friday? If you put a stopwatch on it every time you interacted with your kid, it's probably going to amount to maybe an hour or two, if that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to be aware of that. I mean, I'm as a dad, I'm very aware of that. And I'm very aware of stats, and I'm very aware of, like, even just as a dad stats. I mean, this is nothing to do with any of our topic we talking about, but something I talk about all the time is 80% of the FaceTime you have with your kids is before the age of 18. And as a dad being aware of that, this is something where I'm very active. God, I'm with my kids all the time. My kids are in high school. I still drive them to school every day. I still pick them up. We still go to the gym together. We work out together every day. So I'm still doing all that stuff. So being aware and being present is something I push and promote. And it's something that you're talking about. And the more aware and you are of their surroundings and what they do, you're obviously going to be able to see or see anything that is happening and have that open dialogue with them, right?
If that's it, if you're involved with your kids, and you have a good relationship with them, you're going to know what generally what's going on, and you have a good feel for your kid. And if you meet their friends, I think everybody's house should be the gathering point. It should almost revolve so that every parent knows.
Yeah.
As opposed to, but lots of parents, lots of us like our house to be the gathering point.
Yeah.
And for some parents, that's fine with them because they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, not have, is having that attitude. You just, having seen it from kids so young, you just have to be involved because there are so many parents that are oblivious
to what's happening
with their kids. Parents let their kids put locks on their bedroom door. That's crazy to me, but they rationalized it to me in my having been a police officer that, well, they're entitled to their privacy, so I didn't mind. And I'm like, what could be so important that they need to lock their door? And you know what? Those doors that were locked, the things that I found behind it, because ultimately I, as a police officer, got calls to those homes. And it didn't shock me that there was a lock on the door. It shocked me because that's just doesn't make sense to me. But then when you got in that room, because the parents would allow it, and you see what's in there. stolen goods, drugs, just a mess. Like, and they'd open the door and they'd be like, "Oh my God, how did they get that in here?" Well, maybe if you didn't allow them to
this is a different topic for another day. I mean, you could probably use that exact scenario to shootings in schools and stuff, right? The kids with their firearms or with other stuff, their parents seem oblivious to what's under their nose, right?
Yeah, 100%. And if you talk to your kids, a lot of the kids can say, "I can get a gun," whether they can or not.
But just in general, I mean, just in general, Dave, it's just insane because as a 46-year-old and growing up in Toronto, I didn't have a clue where to get a gun. I didn't have a clue. I mean, you get a knife or something at a flea market, but I mean, you would not. No one was carrying guns. No one even talked about guns. Nowadays, it seems like that's not even. 17, 18-year-olds with guns is not even a question anymore. It's something where, as an adult, you have to be very, very aware of that because you open your mouth to one of these little punks and you get shot.
It's it's just it's the downfall of society. I mean, that sounds, but it's true. I mean, when I was growing up, fist fights, schoolyard fist fights were taught.
I was talking to my kids about that the other day. It was not even an issue. Couple punches, one guy would go down, and you'd move on.
And it was one-on-one.
100%.
As time went on, then it became 2 and 3-on-1, and then it involved whatever a weapon they could get a hold of. Yeah. You even saw it in hockey. I mean, hockey back when I was growing up, pro hockey, they dropped the gloves and had a fight. Now you see them sometimes going after each other with a stick.
Yeah.
So again, it's that, but I mean, now that generation is now the pro or semi-pro, OHL or whatever. And they're losing their temper so much that they just go with what's in their hand. And then these kids go to school with a knife.
Yeah.
Because they want protection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so crazy. As I like I said, with my officer friends, they say it all the time. I mean, you're in the mall or anything, you see a group of kids, just avoid it. They block your way, walk around. It's not worth it. And as an adult male, you're like, these little punks, like, get out of my damn way. But they tell me all the time, just it's not worth it because these kids, just to prove a point, will stab you. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And it really bothers me at the same time that people do get intimidated or allow them because they're feeding off that.
100%, which I hate. I absolutely can't stand that aspect of it.
It's that group mentality or gang mentality, as we always said it, whether they're an organized gang or not.
Yeah.
In a group, they feel powerful.
Yeah.
And if they can intimidate you, then they just do it to see it and then laugh about it.
The reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is sorry.
No. I was just going to say. I mean, I was about to say, security in the malls and that, have to be on that more, but they are. They are. They just can't be everywhere.
Yeah. This has been an interesting conversation, brother. I appreciate you coming on. I mean, there's so many aspects I wanted to talk to you about, and we just ended up going to one topic that that's obviously prevalent and has to bring a lot more awareness to it, with obviously pedophiles and prostitution for minors, and being aware as a parent of your surroundings and whatnot, and being aware just in general, even if it's not your own children, just being aware of your surroundings. If you see something, as you said prior, I mean, call the police, make a phone call. Like, I mean, you could save a life easily by doing something like that. Just being aware of your surroundings and not being scared to bring it to somebody else's attention, right?
100%. And there's so many people out there that say, well, I was going to talk to this officer, or I know an officer, or I felt silly, lose your ego
Yeah.
and make a phone call and you'll feel better about making that phone call, even if it doesn't turn into anything. You've maybe made somebody else aware. You've made the police aware. The police, as you know, with all the problems, and they're underfunded.
Yeah.
They can't be everywhere. So the police need the public's help in being their eyes when they're not there.
100%. 100%.
It takes nothing. It takes nothing to be a set of eyes and make a phone call.
Yeah, I appreciate that. This has been a great conversation, brother. I appreciate you coming on to the Jeff Knows Inc. show and our continued friendship from here on forward.
I'm very excited to have been here. It's pretty awesome. I feel in the league of some some heavy hitters that you've had on. I love the stories that you have and the guests that you have, and they're incredible.
It's a variety, right? I try to bring in as much open variety conversation as possible. There's no set term. The podcast started as an entrepreneurial podcast, and obviously it's quickly evolved from chefs to athletes to addiction to children. Like we're obviously our conversation today to dad talk to wherever it goes, and that's why I love having these open conversations, because there's every single one of them adds a little value to a listener, and it'll just bring more awareness to a topic that I think needs to be talked about.
I could not agree more. No, I love the way you've kind of changed the format from just being the entrepreneur, to being the anybody, because everybody has a story.
100%.
I'm no better than the next guy. It's just everybody has a story, and everybody has something in their current or past that can be of benefit to somebody else.
Awesome. How could our audience get a hold of you, follow you? What's your social media links and all that?
My Instagram is just at JDF Training. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, of course.
I'm involved in so many things, and that's open. That's really the only social media. I mean, I have Facebook, but the two are kind of linked together.
Yeah.
And I think Facebook, you have to request my friendship, but Instagram, my Instagram's open.
Very cool.
And I kind of do the same thing. I have a wide variety. I'm all about promoting
health and
positivity and fitness.
Yeah, which is awesome. And I mean, the audience that's seen the video can see that with you, and actually in your gym at home, which is a pretty cool thing to see today. And just for everybody to be aware quickly before we leave off, Dave is obviously heavily into the bodybuilding scene in the bodybuilding world. And I think you're done your last competition, or are you still at the competition level? Are you still doing this? Or I remember last time we talked, you said that might have been your last.
Yeah, I competed last year. I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete this year because I had so much going on. Whether I do next year or not, I don't know. It's kind of like it keeps me focused.
Yeah.
If I think I might. So I try to stay right there as far as my conditioning goes.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much for coming on, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been great.